Coming up on today's show, there's just one story. Electric cars being made at scale, and they're profitable. Well, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. In fact, wherever you are in the world, welcome to EV News Daily. It's Friday, the 26th of October. It's Martyn Lee here. And you know, I'm normally scouring the internet to find you a range of stories. Well, today it's just the one. Thank you very much to myev.com for helping make this show. They have built the first marketplace specifically for electric vehicles, helping you buy and sell and learn about EVs as well. Wherever you're living in the USA, have a look online. They've got a big footprint all over the country. You see a massive range of cars on there, and you can learn and research about EVs at myev.com as well. This is a podcast with a difference, as it's only on one topic. You know, I always cover as many topics as I can to do with sustainable transport and energy on this podcast, and try and stay pretty agnostic as to any favouritism towards one name or another. The only story to talk about today, though, is Tesla, but in no way do I think I can do a better job than those who regularly produce pure Tesla podcasts. The best content that's out there, the likes of Ryan McCaffrey with his Ride the Lightning podcast, and I love Rob Maurer's podcast, which is all about the financials, the ups, the downs, the bulls, the bears. It's, you know, my knowledge of the stock market goes as far as Trading Places with Eddie Murphy and Dan Aykroyd. Good movie. Actually, though, this isn't a Tesla podcast. This is a podcast about one company. It just happens to be Tesla, but it's the story of where we came from, of where we're going to. I've made 276 of these shows now, so maybe it's the chance to have a bit of a reset and draw a line in the sand, regardless of whether it's Tesla or somebody else. This is really about any company in the world making a profit on electric cars by producing them at scale. If you could, I'd say pour yourself a Tesla Keela and enjoy this one. Yesterday, Tesla changed fundamentally as a company. It is now mass-producing pure electric cars, and they're making a profit. Some background, if you will. Most analysts were expecting the earnings call to be scheduled on maybe October 31st or the first week of November. So when Tesla said, hey, what are you guys doing in the next 10 minutes? We got some news for you. It was surely a sign that they were confident, had some good news. Okay, so we got a little more advance notice than 10 minutes, but you get the idea. Wall Street forecasts were for a revenue of $6.3 billion. They came up with $6.8 billion revenue. They generated free cash flow of $881 million. The GAAP, the generally accepted accounting principle. It's the figure that most people will look for. The GAAP net income, the number that's being reported as profit, $312 million. I've seen another number which is over 400 million, which some people are calling the profit. 312 million is the GAAP net income. Quarter two loss, last quarter, was 612 million. It's almost a billion swing on the swingometer from 600 in the red to 312 in the black. That's not a bad swing. Operating margin of 6.1%. In Q2, so, you know, April, May, June, the gross margin on Model 3s was 5%. Analysts, so many of them as well, so-called experts, and there's many of them been talking today, trying to find reverse gear as quick as possible, going, no, I never said that, no, I've always loved Tesla, they're really good. That's not what you said 24 hours ago. Analysts pretty much everywhere doubted that Tesla could even get anywhere near 15% profit margin on the Model 3. The actual number is over 20%. Production costs are plummeting. They've got $3 billion of cash and cash equivalents on hand. The earnings call was, like I say, just after I recorded the last podcast, so I've been through it a couple of times, and my impression of it is that there's no evidence of them crowing about the results or gloating. They really did rise above the swamp where all the negativity lives and just got on with it. Right, initial comments then.
This quarter was made possible by the incredible execution of our employees across the board, from sales, production, delivery, service, energy, engineering, finance, and all of our G&A teams. Really, every part of the business executed incredibly well.
Well, on the call, Elon Musk spoke a lot about safety, how they're topping the crash test charts because they don't build cars to game the system. If you want to game the system, you can build a car that is strong where you know the crash tests are going to be done. They said that they are the anti-gamers. They're trying to anti-game the system, as in they crash their own cars. They find the weakest points. They make those points stronger. Not to ace the crash tests, but just to make the safest car to put your loved ones in. It's why some people think they're over-engineered. Some people who don't think like Tesla.
What is the worst way that the car could be hit? Not just sort of strengthened where we know the test will happen and that kind of thing. Obviously, we're all in these cars. Our friends are in these cars, families in the cars, so we care a great deal about safety. A lot of people think safety is boring, but not at Tesla.
Well, Todd Maurer on the call spoke about the architecture of an electric vehicle. And when you don't put a big fossil engine in the front, you've got all that room up front. This is their philosophy. They've got all that room up the front. When you're not putting frunk puppies on Twitter, where the fossil engine would be, it's basically a giant crumple zone. It makes Teslas way safer for not only the occupants of Teslas, but also the occupants of those cars which might unfortunately collide with a Tesla. It's better all round to drive an EV. Well, Elon got pretty choked up when he talked about Ryan McCaffrey's idea of using fans to help the official Tesla staff over a couple of weekends when those deliveries got really busy, when handovers were crazy, and how Tesla owners would spend time with new buyers just chatting and answering questions. This should apply to all other EV makers. It's not something unique to Tesla, whether it's an Audi e-tron or I-Pace, a Mercedes-Benz EQC. All of those fans should be excited about owning those cars. But do you think somebody would turn up to any other car maker's dealership to help new buyers? Well, maybe not.
I especially want to thank customers who helped. It's like I've never even heard of this. Maybe this has happened before, but I've never heard of a case where a company's customers actually cared about the future of the company so much that they volunteered their time to help the company succeed. I think that's amazing. Just don't see that anywhere. Yeah, it's like really chokes me up actually.
One of the most anticipated features, and frustratingly not active yet, is navigation on autopilot, or navigate on autopilot. Stuart Bowers took to the call to talk about how you can change lanes on nav on autopilot without manually initiating the move.
With the advancement in neural networks covering 360 degrees of view around our car, we can provide a level of constant vigilance that humans just can't. Ultimately, this should allow us to warn and even intervene for an enormous percentage of modern accidents and to ship these improvements as software upgrades to our existing customers.
We have a lot of, we see this all the time in the data where the car will do an automatic braking event and save a pedestrian or another car from impact. This happens all the time.
All the time.
Yeah, all the time.
Yeah,
especially every day. It's like pretty crazy.
Yeah, the team's done incredible work here, and by bringing up more of the cameras around the car, we can detect things as they come toward us, not just directly in front of us.
Yeah.
They also expanded on full self-driving, and why, for now, it's off the menu when you buy new cars. It was just too confusing, they say. It will require new hardware. For the older Teslas, Andre Carpathy said the improvement is going to be dramatic.
The only thing that needs to change between a car that's produced today and a car that's, say, produced in the second quarter of next year is swapping out the Autopilot computer. Right. This is a simple change that takes less than half an hour in service to upgrade the computer. And so anyone will be able to upgrade their computer to full self-driving capability, or upgrade their car to full self-driving capability with a simple service visit.
Batteries are always a hot topic, and JB Straubel said they have other partners that they can lean on, apart from Panasonic, if they really need that supply. This is something that I forget. I'm not sure I even ever knew it.
We do have third-party supplies of energy cells, so that production can continue even independently of the Panasonic supply in Sparks. So that's been very helpful, and that is expanding in future quarters. And also the Panasonic supply is expanding. The productivity of existing lines is continuing to improve with a lot of hard work from the engineering teams and just operational stability. And we continue to bring online new production lines. So even just in the last several weeks, we've started up yet another cell production line with Panasonic, and through the end of the year, there's another line coming on, and then one shortly after that. So there's a steady increase in the total supply. that should keep us ahead of even Model 3 growth, and also should let us have a larger percentage of energy supply be sourced from Giga locally.
Also remember about Tesla Grohmann as well. Well, Grohmann Engineering, or Tesla Grohmann Automation, as they now are, a German company that was acquired last year by Tesla, not under the radar, not quietly, but very rarely gets talked about. Grohmann was the company that used to help other car makers make their factories more efficient. Of course, when Tesla bought them, those other contracts are no longer in place. And that company, which is dedicated to making factories work better, is now solely working on Tesla, and particularly the Gigafactory. And so you've got new lines coming there, more efficiency coming from Tesla Grohmann Engineering, or Tesla Grohmann Automation. As for deliveries, Tesla said that it delivered 56,065 Model 3s. They also said that in quarter 3, we delivered 27,710 Model S's and X's to customers, whilst demand in China remains challenging because of a 40% import duty for the S and the X. China deliveries still remained a material portion of Q3 deliveries, and we managed to offset the decline where they're there with growth in North America and Europe. How about Model 3 being North America's best-selling car? Because it is. Last quarter, with 56,065 Model 3s being delivered. And remember that they use the gold standard of a car being delivered is a car that is measured. A car is only really counted when it is signed over, it's on your driveway, and you've done your first 0 to 60 blast. Okay, that last bit is maybe not true. They give you a call. Have you done 0 to 60 yet? Have you floored it? Oh, right, we'll put you down as a delivery. But the Model 3 is the best-selling car by volume. It's fifth, but in terms of best-selling, in terms of how much money in revenue, it's the best-selling car. But even then, by volume being fifth, it's behind the Camrys and the Civics and the Corollas of the world, which are much cheaper cars. Labour hours per Model 3 decreased. This is incredible, right? Each one of these stories could be like a discussion point, but I'm whizzing through them really quickly. Labour hours decreased from quarter 2 to quarter 3 by more than 30%, falling for the first time below levels from the S and the X, which they've been building a lot longer. Let's talk about the Model Y. This is the new car that I think people are still underestimating. Elon has signed off on the first prototype of the Model Y. This is the SUV, which is more like the size of a kind of Jaguar I-Pace. Maybe like a Model 3, but the SUV crossover styling, yeah? In many ways, although the Model 3 is the poster child of the company, it's the most pre-ordered product in consumer history. I think the Model Y is the story. It could be even bigger. That crossover style, the SUV crossover style, is so popular in so many countries where sedans/saloons, as we'd call them, are just falling out of favour. Tesla make an SUV crossover. Well, now you're talking. Expect to see it announced in the first quarter and unveiled in the first quarter of 2019. As mad as it sounds, because the Model 3 was blow your socks off successful, the Model Y could well be the main event. And for those German legacy automakers that sell a lot of SUVs, really beautiful Mercedes and BMWs and Audis, you've got to think about when the Model Y will be on the market. And they've got to have their competing products out there already. As for overseas numbers, Elon confirmed that left-hand drive models are on the way. It was nice to get some guidance on this. Left-hand drive models for Europe and overseas and China are coming to other territories. Production is going to start in January. So we're November next week, couple of months' time, production starts on overseas models. Deliveries will be February and March. And he did say about the madness of making a car in California and then shipping it halfway around the world. He did say, let's get those gigafactories built in every continent as quick as we can.
Yeah, we expect to start producing in significant volume for Europe in January. And obviously it takes some time to ship. So deliveries, probably pretty significant deliveries in Europe, kind of in the late February, March timeframe, because cars have to get all the way from California to a customer in Europe.
Do you think the other car makers are listening really loudly today? February. They're here in February. I know that all the other car makers need to wait until 2020, and they talk a good game at the moment, but there's new emissions rules coming in, at least in Europe, in 2020. And understandably, I personally have my own thoughts on that, but understandably, they just need to rinse that investment in fossil factories because they're businesses with shareholders. But if you wait until halfway through 2020, well, the Model 3 is going to have been on sale in Europe for a year and a half. They confirmed that parts of the Model 3 are going to be made in China sometime next year. Another huge piece of news that, again, I just get like 30 seconds to talk about with you. They've acquired 210 acres of land in China. Most recently, someone sent me some pictures of the work already started. There was like diggers and they were flattening the land and they're preparing it for building. They aren't hanging about. Of course, when they talk about 2019 things being done in China, it could just be assembly of cars. They could be importing parts and assembling them, but that obviously still counts. The investment in China expected to be $2 billion. They've said that everything they've learned so far means they can do that with greater efficiencies. And they've got $3.5 billion of cash on tap, let's face it. And they've got some debt coming up to pay down as well. In China, they say 250,000 vehicles per year is the target. Tesla said this, and I quote, "In order to significantly increase the affordability of Model 3, we've decided to accelerate our manufacturing timeline in China. We're aiming to bring portions of Model 3 production to China during 2019 and to progressively increase the level of localization through local sourcing and manufacturing. Production in China will be designated only for local customers," end quote. Well, let's talk about ride-hailing. Ride-sharing as well, if you like, and autonomy. Something which seems obvious to you and I because, we pay attention. A lot of people are really surprised when they overtly said on the earnings call yesterday about their plans for autonomy. And I saw loads of articles today going, whoa, hang on, this is new. It's not new. From October 2016 onwards, they've been building cars which are capable of being used for ride-hailing and ride-sharing.
But I do know for sure that Tesla will operate its own ride-hailing, its own ride-hailing service. Will compete directly with Uber and Lyft, obviously, but then also have the ability for customers to offer their car, add or subtract their car to the fleet at will.
Watch out Uber. Watch out Lyft. If they can nail the software and then do some hardware upgrades with the computers, then they'll be ready for full self-driving. Elon Musk himself said, and I quote, "The company-owned fleet, as in the Tesla-owned fleet, will just be where there aren't enough customer cars to be loaned out. So if we find a particular metro where there aren't enough customers who are loaning cars to the shared fleet, then that's where we will supplement with a Tesla's own fleet." So that's why it's a sort of a combination of Uber and Airbnb. And then we charge something probably comparable to like Apple's App Store, where they take a cut of everything in the App Store. Maybe we charge 30%, he said, in order for somebody to add cars to the fleet. I think it's a pretty sensible way to go, end quote. So in just that one quote, what they're spelling out on their long-term vision is for you to be able to use your car to make you money when you're asleep, right? So you add your car to the Tesla network. So there's various stats that fly around. The most common one, and I've never seen like a definitive source for this, is that most cars are not used 95% of the lifetime. You're either asleep or you're at work or you're at home and you use them for 5% of their life. I've seen smaller numbers than that as well, like a couple of percent, and the rest of the time it literally just sits parked up. But what if you had a car that's good for 1 million miles, because we know that they're building million-mile machines. Obviously, the motors and the packs from the Model 3 are what they have developed to go into the Tesla Semi. And, commercial vehicles are a different ballgame to personalized transport. So the Tesla Semi will have to do 1 million miles and not blink, and then some, right? So they're building million-mile drivetrains. So you won't have to be worried so much that, my car is working overnight and it's going to put on 100 miles a week or something, because that mileage won't be a problem like it is with fossil cars. So the Tesla network is huge when you talk about Lyft and Uber and self-driving like Waymo has. Waymo has an enormous valuation that kind of dwarfs some people's views of Tesla. Maybe it should be the other way around. Right-hand drive models Okay, my personal interest in this, because we have right-hand drive models here, not mentioned on the call, but since the call over the last couple of hours, Elon Musk has been on Twitter and said earlier today that the electric car maker's new Model 3 is going to be available in right-hand drive only by the middle of next year. Disappointing for me, but understandable. That they need to prioritise left-hand drive. You know, there's only a couple of markets, UK, Australia. What about New Zealand? Is New Zealand left or right-hand drive? I'll have to ask my friend Paul, who runs OEM Audio of New Zealand and evpower.co.nz. And that's where you can get all sorts of cables and accessories for your EVs in New Zealand. I'll drop him a note. Maybe you know. Is it in New Zealand? If you're listening in New Zealand, tell me. Is it left or right-hand drive? So that Australia and the UK, those right-hand drive models are still 8 months away. Oh, that's frustrating. Well, a little bit of commentary on the results. Someone who's been a big critic of Tesla, then a big fan, and then more recently, a big critic again. Anyway, Sandy Munro, who takes apart cars to the last nut and bolt and then sells those reports, literally everything, every wire that's in a car and what it costs, and then sells those reports for a few bob to rival car makers. Well, he was on TV yesterday on one of the news channels, and I think you know what he thinks about this earnings call.
Around here, my guys have heard me say it a couple of times. I think that Tesla is the sun that's melting the ice age. Ice as in internal combustion engine. I really think that the underestimators and the naysayers are going to have a horrible awakening. When I first looked at the Tesla, when I saw the poor build and whatnot, I was right in there. In fact, I even phoned up my broker to find out if how to sell shorts. But after I got in, after I looked at the inside, I was totally amazed. I'm telling you flat, there's nobody's got anything quite like it. And catching up is at least 4 years. It takes anybody else that wants to copy the Tesla 3 4 years. The S and the X, nothing. But I'll tell you what, the 3 is a big deal.
And Ramit Shah, an analyst at Instinet, who has not been the most positive about Tesla, is another one that on Bloomberg had to kind of backtrack and really say the thing that many people are still not wanting to say for fear of upsetting their reputation, if you like.
I think you just have to step back and look at the big picture. This company's having a tremendous amount of success with their Model 3. They've got a lot of room to grow. They've found religion on costs, and we're seeing what is probably the start of several quarters of profitability. And so I think when you look at it from a big picture standpoint, if you're a believer in the product, if you're a believer in the management team, then I think you got to get on board.
So that's all the Tesla news today. It's been an incredible day for electric cars in general, because Tesla have proven that you can make an affordable, we can argue whether $45,000, $48,000 is affordable, an affordable mass market electric car at scale that beats every comparable car in terms of performance, that has seen people selling things like Priuses and Leafs and buying the most expensive car they've ever bought in their life because they really want a Tesla Model 3, that it can be done. All of the others have no excuse. And they'll all have shareholders and boards who have been watching the last 24 hours incredibly closely, and maybe this is what was needed for them to pull their fingers out of their backsides. Because, understandably, they don't want to lose anything, and they've invested for 100 years on fossils and enormous infrastructure investments in fossil factories and building engines. And so nobody wants to be the one that loses a load of money. But Tesla have proved that it can be done. So come on, the rest of you. Let's get those EVs on sale. Or Tesla will go from being an oddball bunch of engineers making a roadster based on an old Lotus to really displacing what is traditionally called big auto. The future's really interesting. I'm so excited about where we go. And hopefully you and I on this little adventure, this little podcast that I make, and hopefully you listen to every day and feedback and email in, all that kind of stuff, we can go on that journey together. I'm absolutely delighted over the last 24 hours, not just for Tesla, but for electric cars. Come on, we can do it. Thank you very much to myev.com for setting the question of the week this week. Do you want to chip in with it? You can do on email, which is hello@evnewsdaily.com. If you want to use the feedback form online on the website, or maybe the comments of YouTube and Facebook. Here's the question. If you put range aside, because everyone wants more range, what's lacking in today's EVs? Is it design, options, choice of models? Is it education? Is it cost? Maybe that you want to take what we've talked about on today's podcast into account as well. Let me know, and we will read those out on Sunday. Thank you very much to 106 patrons of the podcast, whose generosity means that I get to make this show for you every single day. If you would like to add your name to the list, I would love to be reading out your name to say our latest Patreon supporter is... and everyone hears your name. I'd love that to be the case. Go to patreon.com/evnewsdaily. It's been a long day today to pull this show together for you, but utterly worth it. Thank you so much for listening today. Come and say hi on the socials if you want to. Search EV News Daily. You can email hello@evnewsdaily.com. Have a wonderful day. We've got a big interview coming up tomorrow with a founder of a charging company. How cool is that? A big interview tomorrow for your Saturday special. Until then, have a wonderful day.